So, I streamed the game Tribal Hunter recently, and for once, I actually do mean recently. Okay, scratch that. I wrote this script like 2 weeks ago, so, whoops. I had some, growing thoughts on the game, so now you have this video. Anyway, Tribal Hunter is a very normal, not weird at all game made by Melon Soda Soft. An indie game all about this little dude, or well, big dude right here. The way the story goes is that an island is being ravaged by all sorts of bad dudes in the name of Lord Darkdread. The villagers all gather round and pray really hard to bring a doll to life as the island's guardian, who is named Munch. Why is he named Munch, you ask? Well, because he makes Kirby look like a dieting cheerleader. And just like said dieting cheerleader, Munch swallows everything. Jokes aside, it's actually a very important mechanic that sets apart Tribal Hunter from, well, everything, so let's address the elephant, or well, Munch, in the room. Tribal Hunter wears its purpose on its sleeve and doesn't hide the fact that it is, what it is. Yes, this is a furry inflation game. Although I'm like 90% sure it's more of a scaly game, but that's just splitting hairs, or well, scales at this point. If you want to play this game, you better like big bellies because you'll be seeing a lot of them. But it's not just a visual thing for pleasure, rather it's a key gameplay mechanic. Like Kirby, Munch eats his enemies, but unlike the pink puffball, Munch does gain weight. This not only provides fuel for the weirdos, but also increases Munch's damage while also decreasing Munch's jump height. At a certain point, you can't even wall jump or even move until you lose weight. Playing Tribal Hunter is all about balance because this game is a 2D platformer. You better be prepared to give that A button a workout because Munch most certainly needs it. Because Munch can pop if he eats too much, and the bigger he is, the more damage he takes from sharp objects. Munch can ditch the fat in 3 ways. One is simply sitting down and letting it digest. This turns the fat into EXP to buy new skills, and happens faster at save points. Notably, sitting down at a save point will always empty Munch's stomach, which can be useful or it can be harmful depending on what you're going for. The second way you can ditch the fat is with magic, turning it into fire to shoot at your enemies or stealing from the tax fraud committing dinosaur to spit out eggs. But the best way to ditch fat quick is to simply turn it into health. The fact that weight is not just a burden, but a resource that can help or hinder gives the system a lot of depth. Keeping enough fat to use magic or heal, and yet having a low enough fat that it doesn't get in the way of platforming. It's like Avatar. It's all about balance. Keeping this balance between fighting, healing, magic, and jumping is pretty important because Tribal Hunter is not just a platformer, but a 2D Metroidvania. It's primarily a go from left to right game, but there are some attempts at non-linearity, and oftentimes you'll find cool ways that the game links back to itself. I know Dark Souls comparisons are cringe, but it really does remind me of those shortcuts. You see an elevator shaft, or in this case, a locked door, and it's your job to loop around the long way so you can unlock it. It's good level design to see where you came from and be able to use a shortcut to skip the enemies, and the platforming is usually pretty good too, but that does not mean it's perfect. I did notice that at times I couldn't really see the next platform. There's a reason Hollow Knight gives you the ability to shift the camera.
Well, we can't argue with that.
Munch's journey will take you to see a whole slew of locales all across the island. Starting from the vague, kinda sorta foresty area to caves, plains, beaches, castles, mountains, and even the spirit realm. Think we'll run into Uncle Iroh here. The platforming feels good for the most part, with Munch having just the right amount of weight for his jumps. Despite the core gameplay never changing, the locales and the unique enemies therein do a lot of work to keep the game fresh. The aforementioned kinda foresty plains area is inhabited by pigs, the caves by slimes and crystal beast, and the beach by pirates. The variety in design and personality lends to the game's Saturday morning cartoon charm. The most basic pig enemy won't actually fight you, they'll just run away. But the real stars of the show are the bosses. From the pig bandit leader who shows that Munch isn't the only one who's into inflation to the slime king who is also into inflation. Even the game's final boss, Lord Darkdread, gets an opportunity to just shine and be a goober. He literally puts your fight on hold to answer a call from his mom. It's adorable. They're all, how you say, quirked up white boys who are goated with the sauce, which just adds to the game's charm. You see this one right here? They're my favorite. And not only because you can completely cheese her fight, she's the pirate captain, Kilsha. After you beat her, her crew mutinies and you find her just sort of hanging out at a restaurant. Also, shout out to the cook who, despite seeing Kilsha gain more than a few pounds, still wants a handful of that hot fish ass. Okay, I'm gonna go cut to commercial real quick while I think about the decisions that led to me saying hot fish ass. I'ma make this quick. Like and subscribe, check out my Ko-fi and Patreon, and tune into my live streams on Mondays and Fridays. Now back to show. All enemies are generally handled the same by way of Munch's trusty left and sturdy right, and maybe the odd belly flop here or there. One tiny thing that I do like is that Munch does have an air attack that gives him just a bit of height. But interestingly, you're able to control it in a limited fashion. An air punch holding forward sends you forward, but so does holding back, letting you adjust your jumps at the last second. It's an interesting way to tie attacking into platforming aside from the usual attack down to bounce off of enemies. The enemies may generally be fought in the same way, but they generally don't attack in the same way, which changes how you approach them. Enemies like the Ghost are immortal, but can be thwarted by the light, essentially making them platforming obstacles. There are generally 3 kinds of enemies you'll meet. Small enemies, which can be swallowed whole, and large enemies, which force Munch to stop for a second to swallow. They can have many kinds of attacks, from normal punches to pointy things that can pop Munch to even laser beams and grenades. You know, I feel like we're missing a few steps on the ladder of escalation. Lastly, the enemy type most unique to this game are the feeders, who fight by using the weight mechanic against you. The most common are these guys, which me and my chat affectionately named Gordon Hamsey. They throw food at you and are found everywhere, but depending on the type, fatten you up even more. White is weak, black is medium, and red is strong. But here's the thing. Fat isn't the only thing Munch can put in his belly. The first you'll come across is slime, living goo enemies that will force their way into Munch's mouth. There are variations like the honey ones and the white ones which do turn into fat, but the green are the most dangerous. You can't digest the green ones and you have to spit them out, but be careful because they'll come hopping right on back. And do be careful around the pitcher plants because they'll also think that Munch looks much better with nice gooey insides.
Oh my.
Damn it, okay!
The final thing Munch can fill himself with is air. It happens naturally when Munch just inhales without eating anything and is quite useful for gaining size. But certain enemies like the ghosts that possess Munch and the bees which inflate him with their stingers can cause you to bloat. You can't spit out air, rather you simply have to let it go down on its own. Thankfully, fat, slime, and air are removed whenever you sit at a site of grace, checkpoint, yeah. The game makes good use of all these feeder enemies, usually throwing them in some narrow hallway where Munch can quite easily get stuck. The different way the enemies fight does a lot of work in keeping the game fresh despite the fundamentals never changing. However, I won't say that the combat is perfect. Munch lacks mobility even in his smallest form to keep up with a lot of the faster bosses. I know Dark Souls comparisons are fucking cringe, but something like a simple dodge roll would do wonders. Certain bosses will truly test your patience. I'm looking at you, Dark Dread. Other bosses are just too fast. The fox Katsu is a nightmare in his final fight. You're stuck playing Dark Souls while he's playing Bloodborne. This game needs some sort of dodge mechanic because there are times when damage is unavoidable. But that's not the worst part of combat. The biggest problem is this mechanic right here. Sitting down to heal or digest is something you're locked into and can't cancel, and it's done with a down input. Surely there isn't some basic mobility input that's done with the same key. Otherwise, players might accidentally sit down rather than avoid a fatal attack. The way you go down through platforms is down A. Who let this be a thing? Honestly, at some points of the game, I would have stopped playing if not for Tribal Hunter's greatest strength. What will truly keep you engaged with the game is its endearing amount of charm. Tribal Hunter doesn't pretend to be anything other than this silly, goofy, fun game. There are so many characters in this game, from friends to enemies, that are just so huggable. This is best seen in the various upgrade events, which see Munch taking a small detour so he can learn how to eat more. The only one that's required for the story is the Slime King, but there's also an eating contest and finally training with the Wise Master. My favorite of these is the eating contest for the way it includes all the side characters. What's better is that these side characters aren't one and done deals or just there to make funny cameos. They all hang around the game's hub world, the village where you start. Seeing people show up like Tori or even the shopkeeper you save reminds me of Majula from Dark Souls 2. Okay, I get it. That's like the 4th Dark Souls reference. I promise I play other games. Elden Ring counts as an other game, right? More so, at the restaurant in the main village, those other customers you see are actually the donors to this game. They all have unique lines and you can swap them out by simply asking for tea. The island is just so full of wonderful characters, full of life, that it actually makes you want to save the island. The amount of effort put into small things really does shine through to show how much the creators enjoyed simply making this game. Sprite-based indie games are a dime a dozen, but Tribal Hunter truly has some of the best I've ever seen. The way Munch's attack changes with his weight, going from a series of punches and a kick to a slow, powerful 1-2 finished with a belly bump. And it's not just one or two things. As Munch grows in size, you'll notice so many tiny details. Like the tattoo face on Munch's stomach getting more and more stressed as he fattens up, or that Tori will have more and more trouble flying him around as he gets bigger. You may have noticed it in all the footage I have on screen, but Munch even has unique deaths for the various ways he can die. If he gets murdered by slimes, he becomes a slime. If he gets popped by something sharp, he flies around the screen like a balloon. But Munch isn't the only one with unique sprites depending on the situation. A word of advice: anytime you see an enemy inhale, throw an egg in their mouth. You'll find that the results will grow on you. My favorite of them all has to be the one that took me by surprise, where if you're grabbed by a bat and simply let it keep sucking. Always be sure to throw your eggs at bosses. You'll never know how it'll turn out. Sometimes it's even a shortcut to victory. I honestly don't have much more to say, and I had no idea where to put this, so I guess we'll just talk about the music here. I was pleasantly surprised by it throughout my journey. The tracks are nice and varied, going from bossa to rock to whatever the situation demanded. There's even a bit of Undertale-inspired stuff in the true final boss. Oh, as a reward for making it this far in the video, here's a hint on how to get the true ending. Just keep punching. And now it's time for our Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werehog, Deku, Zora Chow, Choron, Garon Lefay, Dragon King Yara, Unknown RC, Lightning Shadow, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon and Miko, the passionate artist. And for our Super D-Tuber special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower, the Great Birdman. Then Poor Mage, the Flight Course Master. Followed by Hodari Lion, the Slime Smasher. Next, Sky King 64, the Pirate Pummeler. And finally, Mahagasaur, the Dragon Tamer. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe and check out my live streams on Mondays and Fridays. I also have a Ko-fi and Patreon if you're interested. As always, this is your host Fuuri signing out.